You guys ready? Texter? It's 9:30. It's 9:30. Welcome to the March 19th, 2015 Downtown Design Review Committee. First item of business is to turn off our phones. I've done it already. And roll call.
Betsy Brunstetter.
Present.
Gigi Faulkner. Present. Charles Ainsworth. Present. Ike Akinwande. Corey Bates. Connie Scothorn. Richard Tannenbaum. Present. You have a quorum.
Great. Okay. Next item, pardon me, is approval of the minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, Tannenbaum, Ainsworth, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. There are no cases withdrawn, no continuance request, no items on the consent docket. We'll start right in with cases for individual consideration. That would be 1 South Hudson. Is the applicant present?
Good morning. My name's Larry Chapman. It's been a couple of months since we were here. We listened to what you had to say, and we went back and we resubmitted our proposal with an attempt to address the questions that we heard here. I'm going to have Chris Heim from RAMSA, Robert Stern, talk about those questions. What I do want to say, though, is one of the things we had hoped to have by now is our traffic study. It's being delayed. It's trying to include a lot more than just our project, and all I can tell you is that whatever it tells us to do, we're going to do. I just haven't seen it yet either, so I can't tell you what it's going to tell us to do. And I do apologize for that. I wish it were done. I think it's a pretty important document, and we're going to pay attention to that seriously. With that said, you all did have some questions, and I do want Chris to respond to those. And then I also have Megan McDermott with RAMSA and Sean Clark with Clayco, and then Rainey's here as well, Rainey Williams, part of the ownership group, and we'll answer questions if you have any further ones, okay?
Okay, I'm going to ask Michael to go through any of his concern, or Lisa to go through any of the staff concerns.
Yes, you guys saw this presentation at the January meeting. It is essentially the same as you last saw it. I want to point out two things. One, in this application, they're just asking for approval of the building and the parking structure, not the streetscape, not the signs, not the plazas. Also, they submitted a revised design statement that did not make it into your packet that I'll pass out right now. The big change there that I didn't catch in the staff report was that they changed the parking garage exterior to architectural precast as opposed to limestone. So it essentially looks the same in terms of it's the same color, it's durable, and there'll be some texture to it, but it's not limestone as noted in the staff report. So we found that it met all the regulations and guidelines. We did have some sadness about the trees, but I think I've talked to everybody who will listen to me about those.
Can you explain your sadness?
Sadness, they're big, beautiful, healthy trees, very prominent along that stretch of Walker and on California, but even from the earliest preliminary site planning, they're too far from the street, so they take up quite a bit of real estate. And the guideline is to get buildings at or within 10 feet of the street. So that conflicts.
Okay. Are we ready for the presentation? Yeah? Okay. Let's go. Welcome.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris Heim. I'm a senior associate at Robert A. Stern Architects out of New York. Happy to be back in Oklahoma. I saw you guys last 2 months ago and you had a couple of specific concerns which we've addressed in the design that you see now, which I think you all have in a packet, and I think we can go through on the screen if you'd like. They were chiefly that when we saw you last, the garage skin was a couple steps behind the tower, and it's since been caught up and is at the same level of refinement as the tower. The tower itself hasn't changed much, other than that we've added entry canopies on Sheridan, Hudson, and California. So back to the garage for a minute. One of the comments, I believe is from Mr. Corey Bates, was that it needed more variety in the skin. So we've revisited the garage, given the four corners a sort of tower treatment, gives the building two separate scales, helps it read more as a concert of buildings as opposed to one giant garage. The canopies were added both as protection and to call out the entrances better to passerby, but also as a sort of pedestrian scale element to sort of soften the tower as it comes down to the ground. In our opinion, it's doing so successfully. The other comment was curiosity about the drop-off sequence. As Lisa mentioned earlier, the landscape will be a separate submittal, but we are planning for a drop-off loop at the intersection of Hudson and California. And I think that is indicated in our drawings now. And those were the head-on comments that we received, and we've been working with Lisa and staff to address a few other minor ones, such as a stair in the parking garage, which I think has been repaired now, and I do apologize for the trees. We do share that concern. It was just, there was no way to fit everything that needed to fit. I appreciate you saying so. That's it for my commentary, unless you'd like to see anything in particular.
How about, would the committee like to see any more? Can't remember how many people were here for the presentation previously. Dick, were you not here? Would you like to see more of the?
I went through it pretty good.
Okay. Okay. Great. Do you have any other people presenting as indicated? No?
Not really
Okay.
today, no. We'd like to answer questions.
Okay. I think I said everything I was going to say the last meeting. I'm really pleased with this building, and thank you very much for creating such a nice corner building. And as I said before, I really appreciate the fact that you're working diligently to get retail on the ground floor of the parking garage.
Absolutely. And
Anybody
a lively
else?
street across all four streets.
I just had a question. I know that landscaping isn't submitted this time, but last time I thought I saw, and I didn't compare to what we had before, that the whole roof terrace was going to have a green roof, and now you're just showing this little bitty piece?
No, the intention is that there's a sliver that's sort of programmed with a basketball court and an overlook and a barbecue area and a bunch of other sort of amenities. The back half of it is meant to read more like a prairie. It's not programmed, it's not accessible. It's something that you look at from our building and from other buildings. But I would say it's maybe 20% of the roof that is occupiable, and then 80% of the roof is just for a viewscape.
Is that going to be submitted when you submit your landscape?
That will be submitted with the landscape package. Yeah.
And when do you think that will be? Is that a long way away?
Not so much, that's more for Clayco too.
I'm Sean Clark with Clayco. I'd say we're 2 months away from submitting for the landscape. We have some art installations that we're considering and people that we're bringing on for conceptual ideas, and it's going to speak to the landscape design as well. It's going to be really nice and special, but we don't want to put the cart in front of the horse, so to speak. So, and one thing I'd add to the back part of the roof, where it's inaccessible, it'll be green, and I don't believe that the actual accessible part has changed from the last time. It's about 60 feet deep off the building, and then the rest is inaccessible, mostly for fire code and all of that too, and all of the accessibility and the exit stairs that we'd have to add, and so that's the current thinking. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay. As I said last time, I think this is a very nice project, and I think it's been handled very well. both from the tower, the retail, the parking garage, the development, looks good. I am sad to hear that the limestone's changing to precast concrete. And I know that the traffic study is still pending, but I would have concern if the results of that study did widen Walker and eliminate the bike lanes. I think that would be the step in the opposite direction we're looking to go as far as having diversity in transportation for the city, having a pedestrian safe streetscape. So I guess I just want to say that I would be disappointed if we had to increase Walker to 4 lanes. I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else from the committee? Anyone from the gallery? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor? Your application is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you
It'll
very
be a
much.
wonderful project. The next item is 101 Ron Norick Boulevard. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Okay. Michael, you want to address this application, please?
Sure. This is an application for a proposed screen fence at the east side of the existing Ice House restaurant, which faces Ron Norick Boulevard across the street from the Cox Convention Center between Sheridan and Reno. And it's on the eastern edge of Myriad Gardens. They currently have some outdoor storage occurring in this area at this time that is not screened, and of course they want to have it screened, and of course the city codes require that it be screened. Our initial reaction when they came in was just to, because outdoor storage is a conditional use in this district, we suggested they just add on to the existing building and do the storage inside. However, there are a couple of constraints on this elevation of the building that are in the grade of the building immediately adjacent to the east side of the building, and that is some underground access vaults, as well as some ventilation grates that prevent building over those areas. So their only option really is left to build a fence. And we've prepared a report that analyzes the proposed fence and its design as compared to the regulations and guidelines that pertain to that, and identified the fact that because it is built to be a screen fence and therefore is not open, does not comply with the requirements of the front yard fence requirements, and therefore we're recommending approval of a variance for that reason. Secondarily, the use, outdoor storage, is a conditional use, and we have proposed that you recommend approval of a variance on that use, but we've been in consultation with the municipal counselor's office this morning, and there's some question as to whether a variance is the appropriate mechanism for that. So I believe the intent today for your action on this item is to only look at the fence construction itself and look at it as if it is not screening anything and will not be used for outdoor storage, and we'll deal with the outdoor storage at a subsequent meeting. That completes our presentation.
Okay.
Paul LaFever for the applicant.
Hi, Paul.
How are you? With me today is the executive director of the Gardens, Maureen Heffernan, and the project architect, Jerry Crone of Frankfurt Short Ruja. Now, I do represent the foundation this morning, but I'm also a member of the community board with the Gardens, and take great interest in everything that's being done there. This is an application that was initiated by the Gardens to address a concern that our executive director has observed in recent months. And that's having to do with the Ice House, which is on Ron Norick Boulevard. Now, the interesting thing about the Gardens is that most all the improvements, the structures, face inward, just because of the natural orientation of the Gardens and people being in the interior, and things serve the interior of the Gardens. The Ice House that you can see is really only a small visible portion of the activity that's going on in this site. It's really built to support the ice skating rink that's been built there and is located immediately west of the Ice House. Beneath the Ice House are all the chillers and equipment that serve the ice skating rink. The Ice House initially was conceived as an opportunity to provide ice skating equipment rentals and things like that, though as development progressed, it became obvious that in the off-season it would serve as a very nice short order luncheon and dinner cafe, and it's been serving admirably as that. Once again, all the focus is to the interior of the Gardens. Now, on the east side that faces Ron Norick Boulevard, indeed, you have the large vault that goes down into the chillers. There are times during the winter when those vault doors are open. They have portable screens that they move around them, but that is not a good solution long-term, just from a life safety standpoint. There are also large grates and things that are exhaust systems for the chillers. So the thought process here is that we needed a nice screening developed here to protect particularly the vaults, and then it's not really so much outdoor storage that we're interested in as deliveries to the restaurant or even the equipment area occur periodically, and because the back of the house faces Ron Norick Boulevard, those things are naturally just placed there until they can be unpacked and moved in and things like that. So if you would like, we do have the project architect here, and he could run you through some slides as to the aesthetics of the proposed screening. And would you like to do that?
Sure.
This is Jerry Crone of Frankfurt Short Bruger.
Hi, Jerry. Can you put your name down on the...
I will. I'm Jerry Crone with Frankfurt Short Bruger, the project architect for this project. And Paul, more eloquently than I could, went through all of the points that I was going to cover, so I was having to go through a mental checklist and eliminate so I don't have to say things twice. And there are only two things that I would mention. It was important to the client and to us that if this is a screen wall, and if it is approved, that it be low enough to make sure that the Ice House sign that you see in that slide could still be observed from across the street and from areas close to the project. So we did a series of vignettes that went through that, and there it is from both sides. The only other point that I'd like to make is that what we have found is, given the use as a restaurant, the back of the house here turns into a break area for all the employees. So the employees literally go out there and eat in this open area with all the people walking by during busy times. So you can see that if you look at the vignette, that's about a 6-foot person right there on the right-hand side, and the fence is just barely taller than that person. The final thing, which I guess would be my third point, is that there are other fences aesthetically that are similar to this one located across the campus already. So we match that very same aesthetic for this fence here. Any other questions?
Would you mind describing the approach to the variation in the spacing of the slats, and if there was consideration about how much visibility there is through the fence?
There is. As a matter of fact, the fence that you can see out there now that covers a lot of the air handlers over at the project by Victor McGee Center is that the slats are a little further apart. If I were an engineer, I would tell you that that's a free air requirement to allow air to get through the slats to the chillers. As an architect, I would tell you that I personally like to see through fences that are like that, and maybe it's just a character flaw of my own. But this one is not like that. The slats are closer to be a little more obscure, to literally conceal the items that are behind it.
Is the delivery gate someplace in there, I guess? They open that up for the onion burgers?
Yep, that piece right there. There's a gate here.
I see. Is that big enough for the deliveries?
There's a double gate here over on the side.
Oh, I got you.
Yes, sir, there's two of them.
Well, I enjoy the gift of the Myriad Gardens. I live a couple of blocks away. I'm familiar with walking to the dog park, to the Park House restaurant, and I think this is not only necessary, I think they handled it beautifully, and it's an improvement. As much as the mind, it's just a phenomenal facility for the city, and on weekends, it's rack-packed and stacked whether there's an event or not, so they really accomplish their goals, and I commend the foundation, everyone, for taking the time and money to put this screening in, and the sooner the better, because it does get a little ugly, not terribly.
Yeah.
And tell the onion burger guy to keep his condiment section clean and put some air conditioning in there. They're dying.
Yes.
They are dying.
They are dying.
They have to take breaks, but I personally think it's a wonderful addition.
We've been missing Dick. I am a bit concerned about the fact that this hugs right up to the sidewalk, and this is where numbers and numbers of people travel from parking areas to the arena. However, the back of the ice house is no more exciting than the fence. It probably adds a little bit more scale. I really don't have any problem with it.
Betsy, if I were to show you the details, and I could if you wish, that vault that goes down below the ground, of course, has a vertical wall that the posts for the fence stack directly on top. So it's literally adjacent to the sidewalk, and we selected that area just because of the structure below.
I think you still have plenty of sidewalk there. I don't think people...
Oh, there's plenty of sidewalk.
Yeah.
It's just, one of our goals is to make the sidewalk more exciting and stuff like that, but the ice house doesn't really lend itself to that either, so...
And they're not taking out big trees.
And they're not taking out any big trees. That's great. Anybody else? Anybody from the gallery? Do we have a motion?
Before somebody motions, Michael, can you recap? I think you already did, and you did in the staff report. What about the fence needs the variance? Other than ignore use, is it the height, it's the material?
The way the code reads, the pickets in a fence like this in the front yard are supposed to be vertical, and they're supposed to be spaced so that you have an openness to the fence, so that you can see through it. So there's two things going on here. One is the pickets, as they were, are actually horizontal in this version, and they are, for a purpose, spaced much closer together than the code allows to have an opaque screen or a virtually opaque screen. So those are the two aspects of the fence variance that are necessary.
Okay, so we'll need not only a motion for the application, but also a motion for the Board of Adjustment.
I move to approve with the condition that the applicant shall obtain approval of a variance from the use regulations prohibiting outdoor storage, and B, the applicant shall obtain a variance from the front yard fence standards. And in that same motion,
a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the applicable use regulations on the front yard fence standards.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second that includes the Board of Adjustment recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Well, Betsy, if you don't mind, I'll take a personal moment. Last night I got on the internet and showed my children all of the architecture that Robert Stern's office had done. So they gave me their selfie stick and insisted that I take a selfie. So, Corey, I'm going to need you to call them back, or they'll be sorely disappointed to return so I can take a personal selfie with someone from Mr. Stern's office. Thank you for doing that.
You haven't changed, Jerry. It's good to know. Okay, the next item is 5 Southwest 5th. Is the applicant present? Okay, great. I'll have Michael address the project first.
This is a proposed demolition of an existing warehouse structure at the northwest corner of Southwest 5th and Shields. You may recognize the structure from the tornado graphic that's been painted on the side, which is never went through the process to get approval. So it's an issue that's in violation out there right now. But at any rate, this is a building that was identified in the intensive level survey as a contributing building to the Broadway Industrial District for listing on the National Register under Criteria A and Criteria C. The building was, the original larger portion of the structure was constructed in 1928 and has a modern style architectural on the exterior. There was an addition done to the building in 1938, and it was used with a more generic commercial style architecture. But as you are well aware, we have guidelines in the downtown district that suggest that we should retain and preserve and restore structures that are in the existing structures in the downtown district, and we've identified that guideline as a concern for this proposed demolition and laid out what we believe is a strong case to retain the building. Therefore, we've offered to you a kind of an optional recommendation. Our initial recommendation is to deny the request for the demolition. Alternatively, if you feel it would be appropriate, we've also suggested a possibility where you could approve the application for the demolition, provided that the approval action had a condition on it that required the retention of a facade or facades of the building in the design of the new structure that is proposed to replace this building. I do want to note that we do not have any application on file for the future building. We have, however, met with the applicant, the architect, on the project, and they are probably, I guess, a month or maybe 2 months away from submitting the application. It's for a 5-story hotel to go on this site, and we have talked to them and expressed our concern about trying to incorporate design elements from the existing structure into their design. But that pretty much summarizes our position on the case, and we're prepared to respond to any questions the committee may have.
Can the applicant come forth, please?
Good morning, committee. My name is Paul Shelley. I'm principal with SQD Architects. Our office is in Tulsa, Oklahoma, 9726 East 42nd Street, Suite 212. I saw earlier the requirement there 3 minutes to speak. I apologize if I go a little bit longer than that. I don't know if any of you, this is our first presentation here, but let me, just real quick, our firm, we do a lot of work with renovation projects, with historic projects, with LEED certified projects. Right now in Tulsa, we're working on a renovation of a 9-story, 140,000 square foot office building in Tulsa. That is going to be the first LEED certified high density residential project in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We are also working on a Marriott Town Place Suites and a revitalized urban district, the Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then we're working on what we're calling the 400 building that's actually on the National Register of Historic Places. We're sympathetic, first and foremost, to, historic buildings. I just want to make that clear. Obviously, there's things to consider, whether or not to save them, whether or not to demo them. It's always going to be a challenge, whether that's always going to be a challenge. And at some point, economics is going to have to enter into that conversation. The project, as Michael pointed out, is a Marriott Fairfield Inn and Suites. It's going to be 5 stories. This is a graphic of it. We're still in the conceptual stage, obviously. We met with Ms. Chronister and presented this to her. And what we're trying to do here is, without getting too much into the design, I know we're really talking about demolition here, but what we're getting into is just trying to respect the context of the downtown business district. Specifically, there's an adjacent building right next to this one that I'll talk about in a little bit, but on this project, what we're wanting to do is kind of match the context of that building, the materials, the brick, limestone, and/or cast-in-place concrete, cast stone sills, and things like that, to just kind of respect what's there in the district. So what you're looking at here is our project. It's a Marriott Fairfield Inn and Suites, 5 stories. The bottom level, per the guidelines, it needs to be a different material or distinguish itself. There will be hotel, one on levels. All the levels will have hotel. The first will obviously have a lobby. Above that, you have brick. Obviously, we want to match kind of what's there in the district as well as the cast stone. So immediately adjacent to our site, this is, just to change here. This is the building immediately adjacent to the site. Looking back to the northeast, our site is kind of in this area here that we just looked at. While we might, have an opinion on this building here, we certainly would never consider demolishing this building. This building, if I'm not mistaken, is probably one of, if not the only building in that area, or that was in the survey that Ms. Chronister presented, that actually meets the 3-foot or 50-foot height requirement for that area. I think everything else is like 1- or 2-story kind of warehouses. But this building here, we would never propose for demolition because of the character of it. It's a great-looking building. It's difficult to tell from this photo, but it's got a lot of intricacies there architecturally that, kind of just really bring that building to life and help it. But we'll have a different opinion of this one down here in a minute. But again, we're sympathetic to historic buildings. We don't want to come in and just, demolish any building that's the room without consideration to other items. But again, this is a building adjacent to our site. So moving along back to the real question, is this building and whether or not to demolish it. We've obviously spent a lot of time on site. We looked at, when it comes down to what we spoke with Ms. Chronister, I think the mandate and the guideline was to retain or preserve, all the buildings, just kind of, just a kind of a blanket statement. At some point, we need to start considering, how much is this really contributing to the site? What will be required to preserve it? Is a structure intact? From this building right here, it's going to be, again, speaking with Ms. Chronister, the proposal was to kind of try and save some of the facades, if not the entire building. The building structure itself, because it was designed obviously for a single-story structure, it's not going to support 4 stories of hotel above it. It's really not usable for that purpose. So then we move to, can we save part of it, and then what will be involved in doing that? That in our opinion, that mural that's been painted on there, as well as the paint, has kind of defaced the building as a whole. You don't really want to get into sandblasting historic structures that are 60 and 70 and 80 years old. You'll destroy the face of the brick. So the other option is to remove that by chemicals. The gist of that is you never know what you're going to get after you remove that mural. You never know what that brick is going to look like. So we're a little bit concerned about that. In addition to that, there are pieces of both of these buildings that are not original. Through the years, obviously, people have done things that, like the east part of this building, say there used to be, doors along that facade. They've been infilled with brick, CMU that is definitely not original. There are other, even in the addition to the west, there's some brick in there that we noticed was not original. There'll be extensive work required to reuse really any part of this building. We spoke with Lisa again about, kind of their mandate and it being, to retain and preserve all buildings. We spoke briefly about what might eventually be added to that guideline, and a couple of those things were the structural integrity of the building, the economic feasibility of developing it, the design form, the proposed replacement, and of course the historical and architectural significance. So hopefully, she said she was working to kind of get a little more definition in the guideline as far as what will determine, whether or not these buildings are demolished or saved, in part or in whole. Just on and we did a brief survey kind of the exterior. We haven't gone on the interior because we knew, again, it's a single-story building. We don't need a structural engineer to tell us that this is not going to support, 4 stories of hotel. So we haven't really looked at the interior, but just looking on the exterior of it, you have the report. I don't want to reiterate all this, but again, just there'll be extensive work required to kind of save those 2 facades. And essentially what you'll be doing is, if you do decide to demolish a building and retain those 2 facades, you'll just basically need to figure out some way to attach them to the structure of the new hotel. They will really be, for lack of a better term, a token of what was there previously. So that's one issue, and then another just as big issue is we will have to get approval from the brand Marriott for that kind of how that's going to look, and if whether or not they want that to be part of their hotel. So that's, I think, just as big of an issue. And I think really with any brand, that's one of the major hotel chains. They're going to have, say in whether or not they want to build there, if that's going to be a requirement. So it's a difficult proposition anytime you try and save these buildings, both from economics. There might be a sentimental attachment as well to those projects. That's all I've got. I'll take any questions.
Well, I'd just like to make a couple of comments about this. This building, if somebody had proposed to build this building in the downtown ordinance, we wouldn't pass it because it wouldn't have enough presence on the street. I think one of our additional goals is to get some density, and a 1-story building is not accomplishing that. And I think it's a smart move to put a hotel here, so I'm not in opposition of this demolition. Any other comments?
Was there any consideration regarding the mural to save it not as a part of the new building facade, but potentially as a piece of art?
Based on our discussion with the planning department and Ms. Chronister, there wasn't that discussion. That didn't take place. I guess it was kind of seen as almost, they've already stated, it was done without, approval. And the mural itself, again, that might go back to, some sentimental, value there. I don't know the story behind it. We didn't really dig into it, but that really wasn't part of the consideration. It just wasn't never any part of the consideration really.
The FYI, the mural didn't get the proper permit. So the mural, and we discussed with Paul, the mural is not sacred on that level. And then, as Mike was saying, in one of our recommendations, we suggested that some portion, and we purposely didn't quantify it in the staff report, some portion could potentially be saved or salvaged in some meaningful way. That may be, a recreated installation on the lobby. I'm pretty broad in that definition.
How long ago was that mural done?
That mural was put on the building sometime in the last probably 12 to 18 months.
Oh, okay.
And it was done, I believe, in association with a company that occupied the building for a short time that specialized in remediation work after an emergency like a tornado.
So it's almost signage.
Yeah. And, to be honest with you, I don't know if it had gone through the Arts Commission for the approval of a mural, if it would have been approved. So,
I have a couple of quick questions. You referenced the other building. Do you all own that other building as well?
No, we do not.
Okay, so
Mr. Patel does not.
you're just trying to fit in the neighborhood? Is that why you
Yes,
illustrated that as a type of architecture you're trying to complement?
That's two reasons. I guess the first and foremost is kind of back to my original point about sustainability and reusing old buildings. That is not one that we would ever recommend to an owner or anybody that it be demolished, just because it's in such good shape. And then also the context issue. There's not a whole lot of other buildings in that area that actually meet the current 3-story, 50-foot height guideline. So
And second part to my question is that slide that you showed us, is that going to be what you're going to tender as the development hotel, basically? And when?
This one here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where's your parking?
We're really still kind of at a conceptual schematic level, but yes, this is what we would generally proceed with as far as what would kind of take place at the existing building. This last slide, kind of up on the top, you can kind of see the proposed and the existing, how it would sit on the site in relation to what's there already.
And when do you think what's the schedule of submitting that?
We were originally scheduled to, without all that, we're looking at the June meeting to present our application.
I'll be here.
Yes.
I always like to see what's going to take place before we go demolish something. But officially, that's what we think we'll do. But other than that, it's kind of a piece of crap building.
So, thanks, Dick. So how many parking spots are you proposing so far?
We are, I think we're at about 40. Mr. Patel has secured additional parking, or he was going to offer a valet parking for this site. Marriott typically will require a 1-to-1 parking ratio for their properties. We're about 100 to 110 rooms, so we're well below that, so we will need to have, additional means for parking.
Okay.
And that will be handled by a valet.
I'd just like to piggyback on what Dick said. I mean, do you have a firm deal to build this hotel? I mean, that's the question. Or just kind of we're working on it?
I would like Mr. Patel to address that.
Hi, Mr. Patel. Come forward and state your name for us, please.
Sure. My name is Andy Patel from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yes, sir, we do have firm. We have license with Marriott to develop this hotel at this location.
Okay. Somebody else had some questions. Connie? Okay. Okay. Anything?
I would just like to add that Mr. Patel has many hotels that he's developed, so he's a pro at this, and we've done quite a few ourselves.
Okay. Any other comments from the committee, from the gallery? Do we have a motion? Do you have a comment?
I just had one comment. I know we're not voting on the actual proposed design. We're just voting on the demolition of the existing building. But in looking at these slides, the one reaction I have is the relationship of the building to Shields, I think, is not as strong as it potentially could be. I think Shields is a major corridor within the city. There's going to be a lot of traffic there, and it seems like what we're looking at here doesn't really address Shields at all. So that's my only comment.
And I want to add on to that, right now this is kind of a crummy area of town, but it's not going to be crummy for long. And I think architecturally this hotel should fit into what's coming and not what's there. And what's coming is going to be really great.
I want to ditto Ms. Scowthorne's comment.
Well, for the purposes of today's meeting, I move to approve the demolition, period, without saving any of the other part, to incorporate in a new building. That's my motion.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, that's a Dick and Ike motion. I'd like to just make one more comment to piggyback on the comments about the new building. I know you probably just took a rendering of a building that you've done before, but I would appreciate, as I think all of us, addressing the street with a stronger way and making sure that just as we mentioned, the existing building turns its back on Shields, turns its back on the other, on Fifth Street. Please bring us something that doesn't do that.
You bet.
Okay.
We'll take a look at it, certainly.
Okay, and all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for being here.
Thank you, committee.
See you in June. Make it pretty.
Item D, 400 North Walnut Avenue. Is the applicant present? Hi there. We're going to let Michael go through, I think Michael or Lisa, who's doing this one?
Yes, this application is for a renovation of the existing building at 400 North Walnut, which is at the northeast corner of North Walnut and Northeast 3rd. Involves pretty extensive exterior remodeling, as well as some additions to the existing structure, construction of a parking lot, sidewalks, signage, installation of landscaping, fencing, and screening. We've identified in our staff report for you 3 items of potential concern. I want to apologize. On top page 3, the description of the issue is not there, and the issue that is at hand in that particular discussion is the use of wood on the exterior of the building, and that is indicated by the guidelines as a material that can be approved through the design review process, subject to consideration of the durability and high quality of the finish. So that little piece of the description, for whatever reason, was omitted from the report. But we have gone through the applicant's submittal on that. The one item we're having concern about with that is that the applicant has provided us with 5 different types of wood, and we haven't settled on any one particular type. So we're not exactly convinced on which piece of material they're going to be using for the wood, and therefore that's one of the things that we're supposedly recommending continuance on. Secondly, you'll note that the landscape plan provided for the project does not have any street trees, and we do want to reiterate that under the guidelines, street trees are not a required element. However, given the setting of this particular location and this site and where it sits and how it relates to other sites around it, particularly those to the east and to the north and south, along Central and Northeast 3rd. Those streets are basically tree-lined streets with a lot of mature trees, and we feel that that's an important characteristic to extend onto this site, and therefore we've recommended that the landscape plan be continued as well until it is revised to include some street trees. And then the third point is the fact that this building is an existing building that will, and the proposed changes to it on the west facade will eliminate a pretty significant architectural feature that exists there today with columns and kind of a classical design to the entry of the facade treatment on that particular elevation. And we have pointed out for the committee that that is something that should be taken into consideration in their deliberation as to whether or not it's an appropriate thing to do to this building. Clearly, much of the area that's being added on to the western face of this building would extend the footprint of the building out to almost and actually over the right-of-way line. So that is something that it is complying with in terms of meeting those particular criteria. However, it will, again, eliminate that facade of the building, and that is a consideration we think is important for the committee to take into consideration. That completes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions the committee may have.
Anybody have any questions for Michael? I'd like to make a comment before this presentation starts. I would love to know why the applicant feels like they could make such significant changes to the building prior to getting permission to do so. And go for it, Tim.
Kind of went old school here. Some people don't like PowerPoint, so I brought the boards. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates on behalf of the applicant, and here today also is Kelly McNett, who is the contractor on the project. To answer your question, Madam Chair, it was an oversight. As soon as we saw it and it was pointed out, we contacted and it was stopped. And so an apology is really what we have to offer, but that's all I can say about that.
Could you make this bigger? Because ours is very, very small.
I'm not
Paula?
in control of that.
Can you? Yeah. And this is the first time we've been able to see colored versions of these, and this makes a difference in how we look at this building.
Okay. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they were submitted in color. It didn't get printed in color. I didn't realize that till the other day.
So, as Michael pointed out, the building sets back from the right-of-way. It also sits at a very high elevation, as you are aware, anybody who's driven by there. Basically, it's one of those structures similar to the church to the south, where the basement virtually was built on the ground, and the first floor is elevated at such an elevation that you climb 12 to 13 steps to get up to that elevation. The architect has presented this design, and the owner has approved it to allow for that building to be closer to the street, not unlike the new buildings that have been constructed on the west side of Walnut. Aloft, for example, actually extends over the right-of-way with its terraces. The lift is right there on the right-of-way. So bringing this out closer to create a better urban footprint next to the Walnut Street right-of-way, and then as with the signage there, also closing the corner off. But the advantage here is it allows a basement level access point, more like a good front door, that allows then the elevator and stairwell up to the main first floor, which will remain just like the building is today. So the main floor of the building is still that higher level elevation above Walnut. For the historic church to the south, if you've been by there, they offset that elevation change with a lot of landscaping in the front, but the building is still pushed back from the street, and because of its historic nature, they chose to do that. In this case, the owner wants to expand the building and allow for the additional floor to be put on top and still retain some of the natural look of the brick building behind. This building is historically was not part of the school, although the school board officed in this, so there are connections to the school building to the north that are being dealt with as far as how to demarc those spaces off. And one of the last tenants in the building was the Turnpike Association. So it's not really associated with the school so much historically as I think might have been thought initially as well. To address the couple issues that the staff had with regard to the wood, on your screen there, it's the slat-looking up around right there. The wood would be limited to a few spaces. The wood that that the architect has provided information on, I've provided additional cut sheet information to the staff, and I did bring a sample of that. This is that I just got yesterday, so I can pass this around if that's okay. Okay. And it's a product that is it's a true wood product that's been impregnated. It comes with a standard 25-year warranty, and its life expectancy is over 50 years. So it's a very hardy material, and it's what the architect has chosen in this case. I also brought samples of the stone types, if that's something that they want to see, or that you all want to see as well. There are two different colors, one for the main color and the other for accent trim.
This is the wood siding?
Yes. It's a tongue and groove product that's attached with a very detailed runners that the wood runs in. And then one of the other questions that had been brought up is the street tree issue, and although it shows up on all of the renderings that had been provided, it was not on the minimum landscape plan that had been submitted. That was just really to meet code. It is their full intent to provide street trees as we've shown on this. Along 3rd Street as well as along Walnut. Walnut has a very small frontage, as you're aware. On the west side, there's not a lot of street trees. From the lift south, there are no street trees all the way across the Walnut Bridge. On the east side, there are really not any street trees in front of the church. There are a lot of shrubs and hollies, but we do intend to put trees in front of the building. And then create the walking path along 3rd Street. South of 3rd Street is a vacant lot between us and the church. So presumably somebody will develop that and also provide sidewalks and street trees. So our site includes an additional portion here that's not part of your application that is hopefully will be used as a live-over retail, live-over office in a future application. There's a great deal of elevation change across this site from west to east, approximately 12 feet between Walnut elevation and the street to our east. So the site does have some challenges because of the grade. We've worked with the staff. They've made some comments about maybe flopping some garage elevations around. Physically, we can't do that because of the elevation and the ability to have access into the site through this driveway, things that we're showing here. So we think that we've worked as hard as we could to get all this to fit on there and to take the access the way that it is intended to do, to allow for the shelter parking as well as the improvements to the building, basically creating this up and over 3rd floor element, as you see on the elevation. As I mentioned, the staff asked for those 2 continuances of items, but with our provision of the materials and the cut sheets to the staff, and I have the cut sheets, I just didn't think you guys would want to have one for your file, but I'm happy to give you one. And the fact that we've concurred with and have shown now the street trees and agree that that'll be provided with the landscape plan. Otherwise, the staff has recommended approval of all the other application items. Be happy to answer any questions.
What's that blue-gray? Is that a sculpture, or is that part of the building?
That is a steel view brake, for lack of better words.
Okay.
We tried to get a sample of that. The architect had sent a photograph that was...
But it's not attached to the building or anything?
No. It's a freestanding...
It could be something else?
That's right. Could be something else.
Whatever you decide. It could be a water feature.
It's intended to be a sculptured metal screening.
I like it.
Tim, can you describe the condition of the existing building and how it's constructed?
I might ask Kelly to do that, but my understanding, I have not done the inspection myself, is that the building's in good shape structurally. And from the exterior of the building, there's not a lot of movement that can be seen. Interior will be gutted. Everything will be new on the inside.
I had a question about, let's see, the eastern part of the site, southeastern. There's a really steep grade going up to a tree line. I don't know, what's the tree line? Are you planning on grading that all down flat?
No. I'll speak up so you can hear me. The site's going to retain a fairly level elevation here, and when this, and under the current plan, it's should just slope down to meet the street grade, which I mentioned is about 12 feet lower. But when this building comes in, there'll be a lower level that has a retaining wall as part of the structure in the back, because this will be at really first floor level versus their first floor level will be more like basement level. So the first floor being approached by the street is about 12 feet lower than this parking lot. And that's what's going to grant the live-over space to be, it'll actually provide an ingress at that upper level from the parking area.
So how are you going to address the change in grade from the parking lot to the road on the south?
Under Phase 1, the proposal is to just slope it right now. When this building comes in, this back wall will be a retaining wall. So that there'll be a wall here that allows that to step down. The street continues to slope to the east, and our sidewalk will follow the street slope. And so as with this ground that we have, this space, which is generous, we go from matching street grade here to probably a 4-to-1 grass slope on that side with the trees.
It just looked to me like it was more than 4-to-1, and adding trees into that slope. I mean, I'm a big fan of street trees, but it looks to me like you're going to have a real hard time getting everything to fit in together.
We may end up having, we haven't done the final analysis on this final slope based on the sidewalk, but pursuant to our grading plan, it works. We may end up with like a half-moon knee wall around the tree well.
What's the material on those garage doors? Are those garage doors?
Yes.
They look like garage doors.
They are garage doors. I can't answer that question. I apologize. I didn't bring that with me. Do you know, Kelly? They have not determined that yet. I think orange metal was...
Orange metal?
I'm teasing.
I don't think we can accept the garage doors until we know what's going on with those.
We can come back
to
with that.
Face the street. The fact that the land slopes up a little bit is going to keep those out of direct view a lot, but...
And we are also proposing a row of shrubs and hedges here that will actually also block the headlights of the cars parked behind there and screen away some of that garage door elevation as well.
Tim, I think the biggest concern I have is I think the west facade of this building is gorgeous. And this building is eligible to be on the register. And I know it's not been put on the register. The building's in great shape, according to you. So my biggest concern is that I think it's a beautiful structure now. Clearly, you could renovate it as it is, and I just, since we have so few of those left in Oklahoma City, I'm just not a fan of ripping that off and doing this kind of modern thing on the front. But that's just how I feel about it.
I second that perspective. I think, there's an attempt here to save or to reuse the existing building, but in doing so, there's an elimination of really the details that make that building significant. There's also a small, in addition to the portico at the west facade, there's a small portico at one of the doors on the south facade. I'm not sure if that's intended to be removed as well. But I agree. I think the details that do make this building significant in this proposal are being removed, and I think that's the wrong way to approach it.
There just seems to be such an opportunity here to use the really beautiful west facade and do something really spectacular with this building. It's such a prominent, very prominent site.
So would the owners be willing to step back and take a breath and look at, taking a fresh look at that, Tim?
Yes, we'll pass that on. We'd request a continuance and pass that on. In response to your comment, I drive this 10 times a day. My office is right near there, and actually didn't realize this building was even there because, in my opinion, it's dwarfed by the school. The school building is such a large corner block. I just thought it was part of the school as I zip by there at 30 miles an hour every day. So I understand the concerns and the comments. I know the owner looked real hard at the existing columns that are there and didn't feel like they fit with the type of redesign they wanted to do. But because our architect couldn't be here today, I'll be happy to step back with a continuance.
One other comment is that even though our ordinance requires that we kind of crowd the street, kind of get up to the street, on this particular street, the buildings are all kind of set back, and a little bit, not as far as this one is set back, or maybe it's the same. And so this one, with the addition of that stair tower, really kind of starts intruding on that setback that goes along that street. It'd be nice if it were not, if you worked with what was there and didn't really crowd that street.
I hear you.
I'm going to go ahead and tack on another consideration. I think from a material standpoint, in the proposed design, including the existing brick and existing cast stone, I counted at least 7 different materials in the design. And I think having so many different materials presents a really tough challenge in making those materials work together, both the new materials with the existing building and then just the new materials together. So I would, in the step of going back and reconsidering the approach, I would look at, I think the number of materials being used should be a part of the consideration as well.
I think I'd like to make a motion for a 30-day relook at this deal.
Is 30 days going to be enough?
I think so.
And Tim, I really do think that there's an exceptional opportunity here to do something really cool with this building, and I would hope the owners would take a serious look at that. And if it's going to significantly impact the economics of this thing one way or the other, I think we kind of like to understand how that would occur, or if it would occur. So I think you did a beautiful presentation, but that's my take on it.
I'll second the motion, but what's the square footage existing, and what are you trying to achieve square footage-wise? Do you know offhand roughly?
I do not know offhand. The floor plate of the building's approximately 7,000 feet, I think. The new addition, I'm not sure how much we added on that.
Anyway, I second the continuance and looking forward to satisfying all the comments of my fellow commissioner.
That was an Ainsworth Tannenbaum motion for continuance of the application. And what?
The May meeting, we're in March right now. The April meeting is April 16th, so we would need the revised information by the end of April. So that's only...
The end of March.
I mean, the end of March. That's only like
Sure you don't want to go to
10
May?
days. That's why, do you want to go to May? I mean, I know you don't want to, but should you?
Well, that's a good point. You guys are only meeting once a month.
Right.
If we, can we just push it 30 days, and then if we need more time, I'll advise the staff, and we'll push it to the May meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Tim. The next application is 1111 North Lee Avenue. And the applicant is present. So, Michael, do you want to talk about this?
This is another, Lisa.
Sorry, yes, I looked at this one. It's the Pasteur Building, which I'm sure most of you pass by 1,000 times a week. The owner, I appreciate, the owner has seen all of the development going on in the area and really wanted some opportunity to refresh the look of this building. So they're proposing to remove the louver screens and add on some metal panel accents. As part of that, paint the parking structure and then paint portions of the existing buildings. So I felt, I applauded the idea to refresh it. The louvers, I detail in the staff report, are, if it's modern, it's supposed to be functional, but obviously I felt there were some aesthetic decisions in there being installed in the first place because they're identical on all facades. I do think that would brighten up the building without destroying some of the more character-defining features of this, specifically the cast-in-place entrance. The additive metal panels I thought were a little distracting. That said, they are additives, so if in the future somebody wanted to restore the building, those could easily be removed. This was a tough one, judgment-wise. It does comply. I mean, the only guidelines we're weighing is whether or not it's appropriate to its style, and that's potentially very subjective. I also want to note on the staff recommendations, we forgot to include a recommendation for item 2A, which was the parking garage, because, we just forgot it, but it will need action, and painting it may or may not make sense depending on what other items are approved, because it was being painted to match.
Okay.
Ray Blackledge, architect for the client. Julie Llewellyn from my office is the young lady that has handled this project, and I'm going to let her speak to it, and then I'll fill in if necessary. We don't want Dick to miss lunch today, so we'll do that.
He won't.
With the louvers, starting with the louvers, you have a 5-story new structure that was added on at one time later. that does not have the louvers, so by removing the louvers, we're going to kind of match that new addition that was done. And also, from the interior perspective, when you're in the offices, the louvers just look like horizontal lines. So you don't get as much light in there, natural light. And some of the tenants, it's harder to get those spaces leased because you want a window and you're really not paying for a window from the interior perspective of the tenant space. The reason why we wanted to put some architectural bands on it is the building has it's a minimalist building, but it also has very much horizontal lines, so we were trying to just continue some of those horizontal lines by removing some of the louvers. And I don't see the new. As you can see there, the louvers that we're adding on, when we move it, you'll have the windows, and we're just using the louvers on the corners only of the brick area to break up all the blonde-colored brick, trying to use a brown, what you're going to see start coming in on the west side of the property with the lift coming in and all that. We're trying to introduce some newer materials that'll kind of give it a modern feel to it. The paint areas on the garage, the only areas that we are wanting to paint are areas that are already painted. We are leaving all the wiring, the horizontal wiring for the parking rails, where all the columns that are going up, we are not touching those. We are only touching the painted areas that are currently painted where the paint is peeling off. So if we do the the urban bronze, we just want to incorporate that into the parking structure. And then there's not really much else we're trying to do. We're just trying to give it a new look and not make it look just like a box there. And I know that was some of the items that were done back in the 50s. And this area now, we're having more modern stuff come into the neighborhood, and we're just trying to, with the expansion and the new items being built on St. Anthony's projects, and also on the west side with the lift and some other ones that are just south of that project. So we just feel like giving it a little updated, and most of the tenants in there currently are medical, but he's reaching out to other type of tenants, and it may help that too. Especially with the new apartments and everything going on, you may have somebody looking for office space closer to where they live. And is there any questions?
Well, I'd like to make a comment. I think the bands are really going to be a waste of your client's money.
Okay.
I think that you could apply that to landscape. This is a beautiful building, and Connie should like that comment. But anyway, it's a beautiful building, and just removing those kind of dust collectors from the building and freshening up, just making sure it's clean and stuff like that would be more than adequate as far as money well spent. So that's my opinion. Anybody else?
I would second that opinion, and I think it's a great building. I think removing the louvers will certainly help the original building relate better to the five-story addition. I agree with the chairwoman's comments on the metal bands. I think as far as money spent, the building would maybe taking that money and looking at the brickwork and really looking at cleaning up the brick, and maybe there's some areas of the brick that need some TLC, I think would help celebrate more the original style and intent of the building. I had one question on the demolition of the metal storage unit on the east side. Right next to that, there's also a chain link fence with, I think, a concrete base that looks like another storage area. Is the intent to demolish that as well?
To remove everything that is not being used there, yes, it would be to clean that whole area up and possibly add landscape in that area to
Okay.
beautify it.
Yeah. And then on the west side of the building, the proposal to paint, I believe that's a mechanical unit housing, or
Part of the stairwell.
part of the stairwell. Again, I think the brick is great. I think it looks like it's in good shape, and painting it would take away from the original intent of the building.
Can we go ahead then and get a partial?
Okay.
Take the bands off and go ahead and get a approval then on the removal of the louvers and the facade building, the metal building portion. And the paint was based upon the bands, so we would go ahead and take that at least to start cleaning up the building.
Yeah, all of the scope items are enumerated, so when whoever makes a motion, just capture the scope.
Okay, any comments from anyone in the gallery? Anybody want to make a motion?
I motion to approve the removal, I motion to approve the removal of the existing metal structure on the northeast corner of the three-story building.
You want to go ahead and keep going?
Well, okay. I also motion to approve the removal of the metal window louvers from all facades of the three-story building. I motion to improve the installation of the window tint on all facades of the three-story building. And I motion to approve the painting of the concrete structure banding on all facades.
Okay, and is that, you want the painting? Okay. Lisa, does that fill all of our checkpoints? Okay.
I just thought I heard you say that if you didn't do the metal bands, you didn't want to paint the small building. Is that?
Correct, and I believe he's talking about the parking structure.
Or are you talking about the parking?
I'm talking about the parking structure.
And can we include that?
It's item 2A.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we have an approval and a second, and basically the approval includes everything except for putting the metal banding.
And painting the smaller brick building. We're not doing
Painting
that.
the smaller brick building. So, wait, do we need something more?
I was just confirming if we needed to formally deny the D, E, and F. It was suggested you could just state that you're withdrawing them.
Well, we will withdraw that.
Okay.
Okay. So, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great, thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
It's going to look a lot better.
Yeah, it's going to be a great project. Okay. Communications, Michael, anything on the administrative approvals?
Nothing extraordinary. We have 9 administrative approvals that were done. We have 4 of those are signs. One's a parking lot, one's a temporary off-site construction area, and the other ones are relatively minor.
Okay. Anything on the Board of Adjustment items?
The variance for the building setback at the 499 West Sheridan building was approved by the BOA on the 22nd of January. And there was an appeal on the approval of the demolition of the bus station, and that was not supported by the BOA, but that has since been challenged in court, I believe.
Okay.
And then the third item is a variance for parking lot paving at the condominium project that was approved over here by the music hall, and that was approved on or scheduled to be here on April 2nd.
Okay. Any comments from the Planning Department?
Yes, I'm pleased to introduce you guys to our new associate planner, Laura Griggs. She started Monday, was her first full day, so she's going to be staff support for downtown and River, and since the filing deadline for the next meeting was Tuesday, the April meeting will be her product, and I think she'll do a great job.
Awesome. Hi, Lori. Okay.
And in that, I'll commend... I'll commend...
He has a big grin on his face.
I know. I mean, Michael, as you know, for the last 8+ months has handled, like I occasionally grab a case for various reasons and to help him out, but he's handled 90%, maybe 95% of the cases.
Thanks, Michael. Okay. Any communications from the committee members?
I just think that, I don't know what's going on, but it's spring break, we're either too old or too young to have kids to go, I guess.
It's quiet. Even the game last night was quiet.
Did we win or lose?
We won. We didn't cover the spread.
Okay.
I don't think I said that.
Anything else? Okay, our next meeting is Thursday, April 16th, as was mentioned before. Applications were due by 2 days ago. So do we have a large...
To be honest, we haven't even hardly looked at it. This has been this meeting was one of the most challenging because all the cases had some specific, difficult nuance. And so we haven't even looked at it.
Okay. We have Mr. Lackmeyer in the audience. Any comments from the audience? Okay. We are adjourned.
Thanks for the nice articles, Steve. What? I said thanks for the nice articles.
Is this what a slowdown feels like? 'Cause it doesn't feel like it's slowing down.
Now that was